Hey there. Good morning. There was a video that I did yesterday, translating quantum deadlight, um, and I ran out of memory to be able to finish what was really the initial point of even doing the video, which was to share the information, right? That I gained through experience and the importance that is gained from those experiences, which, when you think about it as a soul's journey, it means you're on a journey of self discovery. You're learning more about yourself and the relationship that you have with others and what you choose to use your energy for to participate, which thus becomes the experience of what you learn through by what you love to do, right? So I love to serve. I'm on fire to serve. Okay, that's why I went into all the caretaker type of using my energy to do those things whenever I'm experiencing. Remember, we're going back to 4 years of age. Anytime that I'm experiencing a loss in voltage in you, my hand is there, my hug is there, my smile is there to lift your spirit so you can feel more power in that spirit, which is the power of that love, which is the power of real love, which is real living light. It is not dead light. Right? Your antenna will pick it up. So I was using an experience that I had. So I got a little more time to sort of maybe cover more of the details, even though you can imagine how the details are when you're actually experiencing it, how you could enumerate that. And I certainly won't do that. But in a nutshell, so to speak, or try to summarize the main focus of what I learned through this process, what the girl that I married learned about me, what I learned about her, and naturally why it is that our energy as magnets gravitate to be in certain places, geometrically, if you will, or geomagnetically. And that is defined or experienced by something I'm sharing with all of you. So I left off where I was working for the U.S. Forest Service, although I've worked for a lot of different agencies, for the reason in which my roadmap as a high-speed magnet, as a monopole, was going through all the places that I was going through, and why I was there at the moment I was there. Remember, a magnetic moment, the moment that those circuits are opening and closing at a very high rate of speed, right? Because you're hypersensitive, which means you experience everything. And then those are the reaction states between the two poles, right? But I'm a monopole, which means the magnets are one. We're one with all creation, gifting love forever, right? Okay. So when I got laid off from the Forest Service, okay, in what year was this? 1978, I guess it was. I went and applied for a job to go to work for a company, which was a division of Circle Seal Controls. Circle Seals was in Anaheim, California, and they were building gauges, high precision gauges used in the nuclear industry. And you can tie all the stuff with my history with the U.S. Department of Energy, Idaho National Engineering Laboratory, why I went to UCI and environmental engineering, why I was at Rockwell International, Space Transportation, Satellite Systems Command, Information Systems Command. It's all tied together because earlier than that, when I was still in high school, I was also at a place called Collins Radio in Newport Beach. Look up Collins Radio as it relates to the Mercury program, the astronauts, NASA, Nazis, etc. With their facility down there in Newport Beach, and what were they making? Chips, processors going into calculators and all that. DOS, right? Silicon wafers, silicon, programming silicon. Okay, so go a little bit forward into my life into 1978, and I worked for Hex Engineering, which was a division of Circle Seal Controls, and I was in charge of production. Okay, so now what I'm doing is, and you can understand how this works, and now we're back to the minus slash the plus, because basically what I was doing was translating the exchange in water columns. So in other words, we had a big machine shop out back, and I was in charge of all the inventory, in charge of all the purchasing, in charge of all the production based on what's on sales. The salesman. Okay. So now I saw myself playing Mr. Smith wearing, because they have rule-based functions with artificial intelligence running Mr. Smith programs, right? So you're supposed to, just like their schools. Remember, I talked about that when I went to school at Foothill High School. When was that? I started out in 1966. You could pretty much, they actually had what were known as dress codes. Codes. Everything's coded, mathematical codings. See, like, for example, when I showed up as a sophomore the first day of school, they told me I couldn't come in there to be programmed unless I was willing to cut my hair and follow the code. That's a code transmission. Okay. They don't want native spirit in there, right? That's how they ended up. It's called expelled. I was expelled out of their programming schools, which are human resource training centers, resource utilization, battery slaves. Thank you, Aldous Huxley. So anyway, here I am at Hex Engineering. And so when I was at Hex Engineering, they selected me to run another division, which was in Newport Beach, California, called PSI Products. So this is a little more money. And the girl I'm married to is happy about that, right? Because all I'm basically doing all day long is running numbers as energy, trying to maintain the peace, right? So these guys keep making more money. So I was doing what they call costing out. So now you're back to the minus/the plus, which means how much it costs them in order to maintain what they're aware of in energy, which is the production, which is the mass assembly line of being salesmen, of what they sell back to us, what they extract, what mama gives to us for free. Okay, so they invert everything, right? This is when we call it, this is deconstructing what is already there in nature, right? And then they regurgitate it into something else that now essentially becomes the method by which they poison the planet. Because now the planet is going to be contaminated as a result of what they do to earn money, which means that this is how their planet killing device, cube devices, goo cube codes, keep the insanity running, right? So now if the other side of the equation, which is the high-speed vibration, which is the core blast furnace, represented by an oversoul, a monopole in my case, right? Get it up, get it up, get it up, get it up. Means that where I'm at, I'm burning up all the lines of communication, which are represented by the code transfers of everybody that I'm associating with in that factory that is running those codes, because they're programmed to run self-destruct. Okay? We create worlds out of what love is. They deconstruct them and destroy what love creates and aren't aware of it, right? Because they're just performing a job upon which they get paid in fake money that doesn't really exist because it's a figment of their imaginary numbers. So they're using imaginary numbers based on electron exchange between photons and electrons in order to do what? Harvest energy off soul batteries. Okay, so here I am playing Mr. Smith, calling myself a professional briefcase holder, right? I'm doing this, briefcase holder. I'm a briefcase holder, right? I'm playing the game. When you're in Rome, do as the Romans do. Be a Mr. Smith. Okay? And so I go from Hex Engineering, now I get promoted to run a new division that was family owned by the Lindsay family. And I love the Lindsays. The Lindsays were good, decent people. They were considerate. It was a family-run business. Now it's part of a larger corpus. Another larger corpus. So you can see when you begin, if you just want to study the history, their history that they write as a result of the programming with the artificial intelligence, how they were buying up everything that was family-owned, from a family-owned farm to a family-owned ranch. Corporations want to own all of it. Every last bit of it. So you can see where this goes, where you can couple this to a few movies. Okay? Terminator, Rise of the Machines. 2, Minority Report with Tom Cruise. 3, your Shadow Being group, right? Which is represented by what? Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Fast and Furious. Remember Paul Walker? Right? Tie that all together into that, right? Along with The Matrix. Neo and Trinity, Remember who John was in the Terminator? Remember who Sarah was? Because it's really too bad that those videos are not up anymore. With Dante Sartori, okay, he had a number of videos up, and he had mentioned, we've been here before. And that's true. When he said that, I said, yep, we've been here before. Okay, so now this is where I've covered the difference between learning speed, and I've covered this because while I was a student at the University of Arkansas, right? The difference in speed and what we call bifurcation of the hemispheres. Now you get into the H2 plus 1, right? Protons, neutrons, electrons, fusion, cold fusion, hot fission, reaction states, how we react to what? Our environment. Is it positive or negative? What does it feel like in our heart and soul, right? So in this particular case, I was making decent money. I was living in a fairly new condominium. And if I've ever shared with you about the lady that I married who was Hungarian, her father was Romanian, her mother was Hungarian and a gypsy. And she was a radio operator for the underground, what was known as the underground, or the freedom fighters, okay, in Budapest. And if you remember 1957, when that went down with the Soviet tanks came in there, you can understand why her mother was trying to program her child in order to think in terms of the scarcity of energy, which is the scarcity of money as it's translated as money, right? So that heavy influence of programming codes that were being exchanged between her mother and her is why I mentioned before when I married her, at the time I put the ring of Saturn, that I knew it was only going to last 7 years. And it's not like I was purposely trying to make that happen as if I already knew, because of the way that the math works between what she represents and what I represent, which is the difference between a material pathway, which is matter state and matter density, and wanted to expand your light to experience more what light creates, which is what love creates. So the more you are what love is, and you are an eternal being, because you're a monopole, you realize that the worlds that we live in are the ones that we create out of what love is. And they're pure because the light is purified, because the amount of fire that is represented by that light is as pure as it gets. See? Which is why I told her before I married her, listen, I hang out with a girl in the planet, the great living oversoul spirit of Mother Earth. That's who I keep company with, is to be with her in order to do what it is that I do to get it up, get it up, get it up. So you know that trees are mirrors, so I want to hang out with big mirrors, real living, sentient, alive beings, which is living energy, instead of lower density population consciousnesses that live in dead zones, dead water zones, and those are your cities. That's why they wanted everybody herded into kill zones, as many as they could get. All you have to do is look through the mirror in the history of what happened to the native tribes and clans on Turtle Island. And you see, remember when Russell Means talked about it, when we went before Congress and said, now they want to put everybody on the reservation, which means they want everybody connected through neural lace. Hive minds. Groupthink, corporate groupthink. Now they got everybody under control. And that's their dilemma, is control of what they don't love in their own mirror. So in this particular case, I get a phone call one day. And it's the U.S. Forest Service out of Santa Ana, California, saying, listen, we got a permanent appointment for you. Would you like to come to work for us, Forest Service? Hell, now I get to be in the forest full time. Now I don't have to live in a city anymore and experience a lower frequency density in the population that's in a city. Now I get to work in the forest and protect the forest and all the little squirrels and the bears and the birds and the trees and everything that's out there that is electrical and powerful and nature. Yeah, tryptamines, alkaloids like in DMT and ayahuasca and peyote and mescaline and all the rest of it. Being with a creative artist that is a healing artist. So it's like, you know your domain. You know where you love to hang out because you're a high energy unit. Just like being on the Big Island. Yeah. We love our energy. That's the spirit. That's called a live one, a live wire. See, so you can't hold a live wire captive to Mr. Smith. Now we're back to Neo. Remember what happened to Mr. Smith in that crater with all that rain? Why it was rain? It wasn't like Neo and Mr. Smith in one of those final scenes are out in the desert. No. They want to bring the darkness and all the rain, all the water, the water worlds, the vapor, right? Vapor pressure. Yeah. So what happened was, guess what happened out of this? Guess. You can imagine what my wife's response was at that time. It's called a magnetic reaction state. To what? Becoming aware of what I'm going to share with her that she's now aware of and what her reaction was. She came at me with a knife going up the stairs. She wanted to kill me. That's not the only thing that she wanted to do. She actually tried to employ my mother to work against me and have me put away in a psychiatric institution. You know what she told my mother? She told me the same thing what she told my mother. That there had to be something wrong with me. I was deeply disturbed that anybody would ever leave a job to become a Mr. Smith. Okay? And want to go back to be in nature, to go be with the great living oversoul spirit of Mother Earth. That's one flew over the cuckoo's nest, isn't it? The girl I married wanted me to be put away because I preferred to hang out with a goddess to heal a planet. Okay? She was actively trying to get me into a hospital because of how deeply I love her and how deeply I love everyone here that has suffered as a result of these corporate tyrants, okay, whose mind's energy is in and of itself infected with a virus. Because they do not know how to let go of us. Let it be. Let it be free. It was born out of what love is, as a free spirit. Let that spirit that is in that energy, that is what love is, be free to create what it chooses to create out of what love is, which is what we are, that goes on forever, gifting you all eternal unconditional love, because that's what we are in spirit form of the energy, which is the music, which is the waves that go on forever, creating worlds out of what love is, because that's what we are, which is the energy that we use to do it with, which is the music. She didn't comprehend and understand that, even though I had tried to do my best to communicate to her when I met her when I was part of a Hilla jumper crew on the Angeles National Forest, which, you know how they use their words, this was an elite crew, right? Why they call folks that go out on the fire line hot shots, yet eternal fire is their eternal enemy, and they say that. Right? And why that publication in 1970 with the U.S. Forest Service, with the corporate military establishment at DARPA, which is the Pentagon, tasked, you know what tasking is? They tasked, a task modality, they tasked the U.S. Forest Service as an Agent Smith to weaponize the spirit of fire that they perceive as their eternal enemy, when in fact that is eternal unconditional love that's on fire. So you can see that the U.S. Forest Service and the Pentagon and their corporate military is inverted. So that's not a secret why it was I started in 1970, which is 70, which is back to 7. They're negative, we're positive. I'm 1, which basically means 0, which means there is no time. That's eternal love that goes on forever, gifting eternal unconditional love. That's the energy that we use to dream, which means there is no unconsciousness. It's consciousness, which is the purest energy of creation manifestation mode. That's dreamland. You're dreaming in real time, which is real eternal love that is doing that. I've done that with Mama. As a matter of fact, I've done that here on this island, the Big Island. And have had those beautiful experiences on the island of Kauai. So what happened out of that was she was actively trying to get me into a psychiatric institution because she In her mind, I am insane. I'm not sane. I'm not rational. Something's gone wrong with my mind. Why I would ever choose to want to live and be in nature? Because her rage was based on what? Money. Okay. Now you understand the torque speed differential between one and the other. Because the guy that I found when I came home one day and when I wasn't feeling very well, which was not a coincidence, was the guy that's up there in bed with her, right? And the reason she grabbed to him was money. And she told me that. So even though I could explain to this girl in the beginning that you have to accept the fact that we're never going to get rich because it's not about money. I love to be in nature because my energy is in tune and in harmony with the waves that are produced by the alkaloids, right? The trees, the electrical plants, all the flowers, all the bees, all the birds, right? Hummingbirds. Of course. Springtime. And so therefore, you realize what happened after that. Okay, so I went back to work for the Forest Service. Okay, and so you're choosing your pathway. So that means that's much like what we talk about as a split. I'm choosing my pathway, my spiritual pathway to learn through. So we know by virtue of choosing a light pathway or a love pathway that we have a connection with our soul and our spirit. We are going to learn through other spirits that have chosen that pathway, which are all the elementals, which is the great living spirit of Mother Earth. And that includes all the other living spirits that are living in the light, which are what love is, because that's what we experience in energy and soul consciousness, because that's what we are in energy, that we are aware of is what we are in energy. So we are naturally powerful magnets that are attracting more of what we are giving love to. So they can experience who we are, and we can experience who they are. So anything less than what we are is going to be restored by what we are if they're not experiencing being loved by us. That clears all their circuits. That was my job, was to clear all the circuits on the planetary software field. Clear all the circuits, raise the vibration, get that Schumann up, girl, let's go. Right? Yeah. See? And she wasn't aware of that. So, and so this is where we get into free will. That's your free will. I had to let go of her. Right? Except in this case, I had a son involved in all this. So you realize as a spiritual guide, I didn't have the opportunity to be a spiritual guide with my son. So the last time I saw him was when he was 3. You think that's a coincidence that it was 3? With somebody who represents -3? Right? So you see how this works with the separation. So this is where I saw a little diagram put up the other day about the split between pathways. It's the pathway that we choose to learn through. So I know, being a father and living spirit of Aloha, mated with the goddess to become one, then it means that all of our children are going to experience what we are, which is what love is that goes on forever. Because they will experience the purity of the realm that they are born into. That means they're not experiencing any contamination. They're not experiencing any contaminated codes that are infecting their own operating system upon which their consciousness has been changed from experiencing what love is to experiencing what isn't. Now their frequency's going down. And that's how, when I was a child, I was able to experience the difference in codes, which is the difference in math. Just like David Icke was saying, the math doesn't add up. No, it doesn't, because it's not balanced. Right? Hot and cold water. Right? And you see that in a river, you see that in a creek, you see that in the ocean. Right? The calm blue waters of the Pacific. Why this ocean out here and this island is so powerful to tap into, particularly when you're a monopole and you're a sponge. you're absorbing all of it, right? So you know how that works. Ooh. Expansion. Expansion. So you're not experiencing any resistance in your heart and soul to experience eternity, which is eternal unconditional love. So when you're experiencing eternal unconditional love through your own heart, others that are around you are now experiencing who you are. Now they know who you are. You are what love is. Therefore, they know you're not going to do any harm. So they're not worried about you. They're not living in fear of you. If anything, they love to be around your energy, right? Particularly if they need healing. And you get the feedback by experiencing what they're experiencing by being next to them. Like a dog wagging his tail. I love you too. Yeah. That was a real lot. That took me the better part of almost 30 years to heal that wound. Because at the same time that was going down was at the same time when that divorce was going through. And I understand how this sort of works. There's sort of a caveat, or what I call a sidebar to that. Because she was the one that filed for divorce, right? And to be with this other guy. And I pretty much said, listen, everything that we had ever earned or gained as material value, which is based on numbers and energy as money, you can have it. The only thing that I need is my clothes and one vehicle. So in other words, since the material pathway, which is the money pathway, which is the accumulation of energy to buy more things and to live in the world of things. Remember the guy who was the director of the FCC? What he said about artificial intelligence in the world of things, right? Smart grid cities, living in the world of things, choosing to be dense, matter-based, right? Dense, right? Because you realize that the more that you keep accumulating more and more of the material side that is represented by all the batteries that are producing it, is increasing the density and slowing the rate of acceleration with your magnet. And that will slow down your immune system, which is to slow your magnet down, upon which your operating system is running at a slower rate of speed because you're running on the speed of artificial intelligence and not running on the speed of what love is. That's the difference in magnets, right? One's faster, one's slower. So now you're back into the torque speed differential between an inverter and a converter. Right? So we naturally, without being alkaline, right, burn off anything that isn't. Getting rid of the waste product. That's right. You got to get rid of the waste product when you've got done experiencing something as a result of using fresh energy, clean burning energy. So in other words, the hotter that you're running, you never experience any memory. Which means it's running so hot. No memory, no batteries required. You're running on the purest energy of your consciousness, which is creating what we call manifestation mode, which is dreamland mode. Now you're in dreamland mode. And that's why I've always known since childhood. I said, my gosh, it's there's no words in any language using text and words that can actually describe how much energy is represented by that much energy that is making that happen in real time, which is eternal time, which means there is no time. There's only what love is, because that's where you are. You're experiencing eternity everywhere you go, because that's the energy that we're running on, in which we make it happen that fast. There's nothing faster than that. That's an enormous amount of fire. Yep. And that's what clears and burns off all the goo codes that are trying to hold soul consciousness energy captive, because we become the source of speed from which the differential is between the inverter and the converter to maintain balance of the sphere, or the balance of a cell. Living cellular energy organisms, living cellular organisms. Yeah. So this was a lesson. I learned a lesson out of this, didn't I? So I knew where I needed to be. I wanted to go back home again. See, I got to be out with the trees. I got to be out where everything is alive and living and vibrating at a very high rate of speed with an enormous amount of light. So that's why I love this island. Right? Anyway, have a great day. I love you all. Be good to yourself.